Good morning, good morning. ये तो आवाज? Yes. Good. So, uh, wishing, first of all, right, like Sayana, good morning, Zalay. Warm welcome to you. Thank you for, coming here, Sandeep. So this is going to be a very special event for us. We have started, this is our 10th event. We have started these events for founders in Pune. And as you could see, right, like this is the 10th event that we are holding here, and we have been blessed with a lot of prominent speakers, right, like until now. And I mean, we are really looking forward to, having Sandeep. Let's give him a very warm round of applause. Great. So in this, right, like we will focus on strategies to penetrate in the US market. And before we start this event, I have few householding items to cover. Perhaps this is something very important as well. This is something very important as well. So let me start with, right, like ensure that your phones are on silent mode. If you have to speak, please step outside and talk. The second important part, the washroom is on the left-hand side. So if you, left-hand side near pantry. Third very important part, I mean, the structure of this discussion is going to be, first of all, I'll start with asking some questions in the beginning, preliminary questions to set the foundation and context. And after that, right, like we'll open this discussion. Open this discussion for everyone. So feel free to ask if you have any questions. So we'll have this session for around 1.5 hours. So and we'll keep it more interactive. Really looking forward to that as well. And now, I also would like to ensure that, oh, by the way, water bottles are over here. So last time what we did, we gave everyone water bottle, but a lot of wastage of water happened. So just to ensure that we keep ESG in mind, we have kept water bottles. Feel free to take as many as you want, but let's ensure that we are not wasting water. One more important part that would like to discuss is ensure that like you use this as an opportunity to connect with other founders as well. Look, I mean, personally, I think coming on Saturday morning over here is a commitment. So whoever has come really is looking forward. These are like, we all are ambitious founders. So let's ensure that like we are connecting with each other and also growing together. So the idea behind starting these sessions is to ensure that we are creating an ecosystem for people or founders in Pune, where we'll get access to a lot of great thought leaders. And thanks to Garze Marathi and several Indian professionals in Japan, they have been helping us get access to a lot of great speakers. So this is what, right, like we are planning to do. Happy to start this event now. And before, right, like I mean, before we also start, like let's give a big round of applause to all my colleagues, right, who have came here at 7:30 a.m. and have been looking after, right, like all these things, including ensuring that, right, like we get the right stage, right camera. Then we'll also get some nice coffee in some time. And just would like to share, right, like some interesting thing like about the coffee as well. आम्ही काय करतो की आमच्या इथे जवळच रुपाली आणि वैशाली आहे. सो आवर कॉम्पिटिशन इज ऑलवेज विथ रुपाली अँड वैशाली टू प्रोव्हाइड, राईट, लाईक द बेस्ट क्वालिटी कॉफी. सो आय एम रिअली तुम्हाला लवकरच ती कॉफी मिळेल आणि होपफुली maybe that could be our next venture also, right? Like so, right? So let me now introduce to our esteemed guest and speaker again, right? Like it's a really pleasure to have you over here, Sandeep. And with over 2 decades of experience, Sandeep has been instrumental in guiding numerous companies, and I know few companies as well. He has been helping them to find the product market fit, taking them to the US market, defining strategies, and creating really lucrative partnerships as well. As an advisor to prestigious organizations such as Stanford Lead, Lisa Accelerator, and Garze Marathi Global Innovation Academy, Sandeep brings invaluable real-world knowledge. His expertise is crucial for business aiming to succeed not just in America but on the global scale. He has got really great connections, and I'll tell you, right, like what connections he has. Again, please join me welcoming Sandeep. I mean, it's an honor, Sandeep, to be here. Few like one great thing, right? Like I'll tell you, I mean, तुमच्या सगळ्यांसारखाच, right? Like I'm a big fan of Sachin Tendulkar, right? Like, and I always wanted, right? Like माझ्या checklist मध्ये, right? Like one of the things that I had, right? Like to meet him, and not only, right? Like meet him, just sit like really, right? Like close to him. आणि I mean, we were perhaps like कधी मी त्याला सांगितलं असेल काय मला माहिती नाही, but he created that opportunity. I got an opportunity to go to Sachin's 50th birthday celebration that happened in Mumbai, and I mean, Sandeep, right, like made this possible for me. So thank you, Sandeep. So, right. So let's, before we move to the session, Sandeep, I mean, if you could just set up the context, specifically about your experience on expanding into global market. Now consider that, right, like we are all founders based in Pune. If you could set up a context for us with like the background, your journey, about how you, expanded in different markets, and maybe if you could set the context for us, that will be very helpful.
Thank you. I think that was too generous, आनंद सागर. आणि असं काही बघायला लागलं की एकदम असं अंगावर गोडवा पडल्यासारखं वाटतं ते खूप. पण वी आर ऑल family. For me, Garze Marathi, obviously, I live and breathe Garze Marathi as a mission. We have Madhav here who looks after our foundation. So, and since Anand Sagar has joined, I think we have scaled the way we are actually doing activities in Pune. So, which is also very important for us to give the message which we believe in. I think the testimonial of the work I must have done, whatever little bit mentoring I have done. So there are a few startups here who have come here to attend again, which shows that, at least there is some trust and belief that, I am doing some things right. So which is good. Just to give an example, my introduction in a little bit elaborate way for those of you who don't know me. I've spent almost 20 years abroad now. First 10 years I used to live in UK, and then I moved to US. This is my 11th year in US, so 20 plus years abroad. Focused on big Fortune 500 companies, went as a typical IT guy. But then what I realized is I gathered tremendous amount of experience working with different verticals, right from Ministry of Defense of UK, which is probably the most complex thing, to the most known high street retailer in US. So, and of course banking, financial services and other verticals I worked. What I realized is that America, when I went to America, I was really overwhelmed with the amount of energy and the appetite and the hunger to grow with every entrepreneur I met. And I'm glad to see that, when we started this GMG Innovation Academy, the same hunger is there within our own community as well. And I think last 3 years have been phenomenal for all the entrepreneurs in India, especially people who are interested in actually taking their products globally. But there are challenges when it comes to getting access to the market. There are barriers. And आपण म्हणतो what brings you here may not take you there, आपण जसं म्हणतो. आणि what may work in this country or geography may not work in other geography. So there is a lot of that element one has to consider. But at the same time, for me, I personally believe that if you say that you are not considering US as your market, then you are really not thinking your product the way you should be thinking about. So then, इवन ते छोटं तुमचं घरचं थालीपीठ का असे ना, जर तुम्हाला जर वाटत नाही की ते मी अमेरिकेत नाही नेऊ शकत, म्हणजे द क्वालिटी वेन आय मीन बाय द प्रॉडक्ट, एनी प्रॉडक्ट यू टेक. फॉर मी अमेरिका इज melting pot of everything, all the culture, but at the same time it also everybody. I mean, I've been to different countries, but kuthe gele tari the biggest question is like, oh, you're from America, so someday I want to go in America. So I think all of us have that dream and aspiration to come to America. But what is that America is something which I would like to share, what it takes for you to go there. I've done some work with few people. What is working also I'll tell you. What is not working, that is also I can tell you. Most important part I feel is that you need to have your fundamentals very clear in the market you are currently in. So I mean, how many of you are just in IT here or have products and services in IT? Because assuming they are all founders. Okay, who are non-IT, can somebody tell me which other industry you are? Healthcare. Lead generation. Okay.
Medical devices.
Medical device, medtech. Okay. Excellent.
Sorry, what is?
Energy.
Energy. So this is a good combination of the people who have. I mean, I would say 50% is almost IT now, and then 50% is the rest. I don't think आपल्याकडे मोस्टली लोकांना अमेरिका म्हणजे फक्त IT वाटतं, राईट? सो which is one thing I want to tell here, that all of us know that we are heading towards $5 trillion economy, right? So can anybody tell me how much they think American economy is, the size of American economy?
17 trillion.
How much?
17 trillion.
No. थोडं अजून let's around 27 trillion. Okay. So my point is that look at the size difference. If you look at now what China is, right? Around
Yeah, so 17? 17
around 19, yeah.
19.
So roughly, I mean, give or take, these numbers will change. But my point is, even if and the current focus in America is China plus one. The reason I am using this term is that there is a huge focus now of American companies to look for alternatives to China, because the geopolitical things are changing very fast. Dynamically, the world is moving in a very polarized way, and America really wants to take away their dependency on China. And as much as we are all gung-ho about our own economy, I can tell you that the vibe is equally there in US about India. So if you really look at this, I feel that this is the best decade for US-India relationship. And anything and everything you want to grow, nothing can go wrong if you have your strategy right and get the right partners and the right product if you take it to the US market. Pharmaceutical companies are specifically, even the manufacturing allied services, I've been talking to people. There is amazing amount of interest in how to take advantage of what India has to offer. Healthcare, also a big India focused opportunity. Medtech devices, there's a lot of that opportunities I have seen. And more importantly, they are looking at India now. I mean, earlier it was not the case, because everything was getting sorted in China. Even today, I'll tell you, the scale in China is phenomenal. It's like, it's going to take decades for us to replace them. And I don't think we should even go into that competition, because even if we get see, we are at 5, we are reaching 5 trillion. Even if you want to double it, still we'll only take away 5 trillion business of China. Right. That is still an opportunity for all of us. So as a founder, I think everybody should have a vision that, I should have a product or a service, and it has to you have to aim it to be taken to the US market. And only then, I think even if you just try to take it to US market, I'm pretty sure you'll be more successful in Indian market too, because slowly the needs will change. Even though basic needs remain same, some of the market fitment is required for sure. So that we will talk about. Having said the context for most of your, why America, I want to emphasize more on your own discipline of running your own organization here, and that is very important for you to understand. So do you understand 3 or 4 things about your own company? One I talk about is your customer. Do you understand your customer very well? Do you understand the product or the service you are making? Do you know it very well? Is it in the context of the customer you are serving? Are you also thinking about the people? And this is one of the very important aspect, but mostly ignored. Okay, what type of people I'm hiring, who are really representing my company? So talent is so equally important the people who are working for you should have the, I would say, desire and hunger to take your product to the market. If they are just doing it as a job, then I think as an entrepreneur, you should be really looking at how to coach them. Then most important is, okay, I have the best product, but do I have the best go-to-market strategy? And the go-to-market strategy has to be tailored to based on your own geography. And once you create a template for one geography, you can scale it up to the next one, but you have to definitely pivot and align with what the other geography is asking for. I mean, we have Mandar here from Gulf, but we know that every geography has their own needs. What will work here will not work in Gulf, and what is working in Gulf will not work in US. And when I say will not work, is you have to tailor it to the needs of the market. For example, I was looking at one edtech startup yesterday, and it was a fantastic product. And I was introduced, and I was very impressed that he's trying to solve a problem in tier 2, tier 3 schools. But then when I was trying to relate to that, okay, can I take this product to US? Then I related that with what I was experiencing with my daughters in school, and I saw this is kind of given for the system in America. Right. What he's trying to do here is, I mean, America is way ahead of that in terms of automating and optimizing the school system. So obviously, if I had taken that system and assumed that okay, it should be easily adaptable in India, it's still a long way to go. Even the basic attendance is it's not yet digitized fully in this country. So my point is that geographical relevance is very important for your product, and which of course means your customer is also equally relevant for what you are trying to do. So I hope I set the context in which we are going to have this conversation, and we'll open it for few of the questions.
No, so yes, I mean, what I will do, right, like I'll ask first few questions just to, again, right, like understand the basic theme, and then we can go to the specific questions from the founders. So I'll cover, right, like three things. First is approach, second is what type of mindset is required, and third is, right, like what we, right, like we can get into, I mean, perhaps some details, right, like of how can we approach, or how we can, make strategic partnerships and alliances. So first part, approach, right, like I mean, what would be now that like we understand why we need to go over there, right, like I mean, most of the founders over here are here because they understand the importance of going to the US market. Now, I'll tell you, right, like the challenge is when we are working on some product, there are multiple areas that we need to focus on, especially the founders, right? Like we need to focus on, first of all, building the great product, ensuring that we are capturing all the feedback that we have been receiving. Market-wise, right, like I mean, we first of all focus on the areas where we are comfortable with, or where we have access. Now, once we get those equations right, then we get like some space, right, for us to go to, right, like other markets. So in that case, right, like I mean, if you have to approach the US market, what suggestions, right, like consider that like we have established something over here. We are, as you mentioned, right, like we are finding the right talent. We have created that system for ensuring that like we are doing business in India very well. Now, if we have to go global and specifically in the US, what would be your suggestion?
Yeah. So you rightly set the context in terms of how do I know if I am ready for the US market? That is the first question all of you have in mind. Am I ready to explore that market? Just because there is a market doesn't mean that it's going to come to you. And if you are not ready, it is not going to work for you. So my first, and I put sometimes it's required, but there are two things and two parameters I want everyone to look at in their own financial balance sheet. Do you have at least $1 million revenue you are clocking in India? I would suggest look at that number, and I'm not saying that that is the threshold, because depending on the product and services you are bringing and what you are trying to look, my suggestion is that India and Indian economy is itself big, and as a founder, you should at least think that, okay, can I generate at least $1 million revenue from India? So personally, when you know that my business can generate that much revenue in India, you can easily know that this business has a viability and potential to grow to the next level and find the newer market. So that will be the first benchmark. Apart from what I said, that you should understand your customer, you should know your product, you should have your go-to-market strategy, and then you should have the right people. Once you have these 3 or 4 elements ready, most important part is, okay, let's go to the financial part. So first part, do you have $1 million? Then what is your, what you can say, magic number, as I call it. For this is relevant for B2B SaaS IT companies too, but there is a 40 rule.
Right.
Anybody familiar with 40 rule, number 40? So when I say 40 rule is, okay, are you running a business with at least 20%, 40% with combination of profit margin and growth rate? Together that should be more than 40. If that number is not there annually, then you know that you are going to have cash crunch. And if their cash liquidity is important for you to understand that when it comes to US market, it is not going to give you revenue from day one. So you really need to have that consistent run and flow of at least hitting that magic number of 40. And this is, people can say it is 55 or 20, but I think everybody has to look at least 20% annual growth rate and 40 as a number of, with margin. That gives you some confidence that I have a right base, which means I have a solid company, which if it survives for 5 years, I would say, then you know that you have created a good runway for this company to scale. Because important when you are moving to the US market, you are looking at scale. Scale means, scale, like very simple, and I don't want to put any other analogy, just put that our dollar is 83 rupees, right? So that scale has to be equally, relevant to your market as well. That when I'm going to earn dollars for the same, or maybe it is going to cost 10 rupees in this city. If it is costing you 10, you are probably going to get at least 80 to 90 rupees in US for the same product, right? Which means that, so do I have the right resources to align to scale up my product and capability behind it so that I can serve to that customer? And the second part is, you are going to treat and work with a customer who you don't know him, he doesn't know you, right? So the next part is that cash which you have in hand should be utilized to actually build that relationship, and that's where that go-to-market strategy comes in. Okay, so a simple question I want to ask, and some founders, how many founders are running their company for more than 3 years now? Quite a bit, right? So my question to you all will be, okay, tell me your, what you can say, and you don't have to disclose the full financials, but are you happy with your cash flow? Who is turned positive cash flow and it's growing at least 20% year on year? So it's a good benchmark I gave, right? So I saw that there at least some people are surviving, but not at the rate at which they should be looking at numbers. So which I feel is what, so getting that financial discipline is so important, because you have no idea how fast the cash will burn in US, and then you will then realize that I am dedicating my resources to a market which I should not be if I don't have that capacity to run. Sometimes if you don't have that capital or cash in your bank, you need to look at, can I have partners? Can I ask for more investment so that if I am ready for the US market, I have the right burn rate which will actually last till at least couple of years, so that you can survive till the revenue starts clocking in from US market. So these are very important part when it comes to the financial discipline. It's extremely important that you look at US market with a solid financial background. And then third part important, as you said, to set the context, is the first financial, as I said, thing. Right. Understanding the market. You really need to hire a coach to make sure that you understand which customer segment you want to target, whether you should target the same customer segment which you are targeting here, whether you should be taking the product as it is to the market, right, and who are my customers whom I need to really work first is my MVP, which I used in the Indian market, going to be relevant for the US market, or do I need to change that? So few of these things are there which you really need to look at, and of course if you are into medtech and other pharma or other companies, then regulatory compliance is an important aspect as well. So there are certain that things also you have to keep in mind.
Right. No, so this is very interesting, and I really like the rule of 40, right? Like, which is very important that we need to look at. One of the things that I always feel, right? Like, we always, I mean, especially when I watch the videos on YouTube or right, like read a book. I mean, we cannot generalize, right? Like, I mean, certain rules, as you would understand. So many companies, I believe, right, like are building the product. And again, product companies, services companies are also different. So we may not be able to always get the companies, right, like that are perhaps in the product may have to burn a lot of cash. Their financials may not look as great as you would see for services companies, right? So how would you approach, right, like companies that are building products as opposed to services?
Yeah, good question. So I think all my suggestions were around products, right?
Okay.
So we'll talk more about service here as well, because sometimes one has to look at, can I productize my service and still keep the same model for me to take it to the market? That is one thing one has to understand. As you rightly said, the rule of 40 is not like godsend. Okay, people can work, as I said, with having. If you trust your product, if you trust your market, and if your investors and your mentors believe that this product has a better runway, the ki chalo, let's spend 2 or 3 more years with a lesser number of on that, and then go for it. I think that's a call any business has to take. But what I've seen is you are competing in, just a simple example, in B2B companies in US, the SaaS products, there are more than 20,000 companies who are startups at any given time. So when we are talking of 20,000 competitors of your product, I'm not saying competitor, you will be competing in the same line in which you are competing, but my point is, when it comes to the investors, founders who are always in need of fund, so you have to attract right strategic people who will invest in your company, who can help you scale the company. So for that, some of these numbers, when these VCs and people look for, they have certain, I would say, rule book or playbook they go by. So get familiarized with that to make sure that your product is alive. Now, when it comes to the services industry, again, I would say that if product companies are 20,000, services are probably 20 million. Because US is purely a service play. Big companies need a lot of services and a lot of outsourcing. So the opportunity is more than, I would say, it's going to go up to $1 trillion by 2030 just on the IT outsourcing services. So I think it's a huge number. So you can imagine the mushrooming of the customer players in the market, and then the differentiation matters. If I say I am serving a industry, and if I say generically I have everything in the under the cloud, then that doesn't work. So I personally feel that servitization, when you say services, you have to productize it in a way that you should only focus on an industry to begin with. One or two is good enough. You don't have to cater to all the industries. Take them, go deep, build your expertise, have a proven phase zero customer, and then that is the right thing to then land and expand, as I call it. So that's important for you to understand. Even in the service industry, I get to meet a lot of people everybody is doing everything. And I keep saying that, guys, you still need to focus on what is your USP. When I call you, and I know if I talk of Ryan, I know it's a Lang Tech company, and it's very specific to what you're doing. So this is the right approach, I would say, in terms of your focus, right? What you are currently doing. So personally, for me, focus is very important for any company, whether it's a service or whether it's a product. Don't try to solve the world's problem, and they will continue to grow. But solve one problem and then go to the other problem is my small advice.
No, this is great, and considering, right, like, I mean, we want to get into the US market, perhaps the mindset that we need, right, like, is also different. So what we have seen is, I mean, in general, in the beginning, right, like, and for specifically for companies of our size, what we have to do, I mean, we start with spray and pray, right? Then we identify, right, like what are the patterns in it, right? Like, so we find that, okay, perhaps pharmaceutical industry or, banking, right, like would be a good target for us. Then we have identified for perhaps, right, like we can go and find out like what industries it works, and can we then apply that same strategy, right, and whatever learnings that we have in other countries as well, right, like, and including in the US. So this is a very good point, and perhaps we should also focus
Yeah.
On that.
So on that mindset, I'd like to add one thing that when you are looking at your product or service, okay, look at it from, I mean, a lot of you people know design thinking, right? So you have to look at your model. Is it disrupting the industry you are in, right?
Right.
So if it is disrupting, so there are, as you said, spray and pray. The other terms I use it is very common in US. Is,
Right.
see, either you seek permission or you seek forgiveness.
Right.
So when you say seek permission, which means that if you are really, oh, let me be legally compliant, सब कुछ पहले सगळं, I'll have all ducks in a row and then I'll launch my product.
Right.
Or sometimes you become Uber, who just gets into the market and then asks for forgiveness.
Right.
Whether it disrupts, and that's where it is important that what am I doing, what kind of product I'm doing. If you are doing a product which requires severe legal compliances, so sooner or later you'll find yourself in trouble for sure. But then you should have that guts. I mean, Elon Musk, everybody knows. So I'm not saying that everybody should emulate him, but I think there are a lot of learnings that and which I wanted to point out when you said about the mindset.
Right.
So what
So
kind
this
of
is
risk profile you have? Okay,
Yeah.
are you a guy? Nahi main appla, so you're just moving from job into this. Then you are a guy who would look for permissions. But some people may just say, यार करके देखते जो होगा देखा जाएगा. So
Right. No, absolutely.
depends
So
on your mindset.
No, this is really very important point, and again, right, like as I mentioned, perhaps when we are doing business in India, we don't spend a lot of time in doing market research and finding like doing competitor analysis. We just keep on working. So again, right, like would love to. I mean, you mentioned in qualification stage, right, like you need to do this a competitive analysis and some research as well, right, like on that market. So can you help us understand, right, like what approach we need to take, right, like for doing this thing, and maybe, right, like we can take like one example company, and maybe we can take one from Rutuja, right, like she is, right, like into data analytics. If you could mention few lines about your company, and if we can understand how we can do this market analysis and research,
Yes.
would be something very interesting.
Yeah.
If you can just mention about your company in few lines, perhaps. Perhaps products, because he's got focused on that.
No, I assume because there is a lot of founders here, I thought they were product founders. So but I can talk about services also.
If you have services, let's focus on productized services.
Yes, yeah. I can also talk about services. Yeah, let's take an example and then we can elaborate that.
Yeah, so for the product side, we are working on the platform Bindu, which is for visually impaired people. So the idea is that right now most of the people, due to our lifestyle, the increased prevalence of blood pressure and diabetes, it directly impacts to the retina. And because of that, the increase of glaucoma and this diabetic retinopathy is taking people to the low vision and ultimately to the blindness. And there is no online platform where all this community can come together. So we are creating a platform which is a community aggregator and sort of one-stop shop for all the people who are suffering through low vision and ultimately to the blindness.
Okay. So how matured is the product? Is it?
So right now we have already launched on the one of the application is launched on the Google Play Store, and it's been used by 2000 plus people. It's launched in India, US and Australia, and at least in India it is very actively being used, and we are getting lot of feedback from people. And in this quarter we are even launching our commercial product as well. So it was into alpha beta testing, And right now we are planning to launch our commercial version because people themselves are saying that this is really good product and they are getting like lot of services. So why don't you start your commercial product? So we are launching our commercial version this quarter.
So this is, so there are in-app purchases currently or no? I mean, it's just
Right now we are, yeah, do you want to?
So it's going to be a freemium model. Few services will be free of charge and few will be purchased, and there will be subscription model. So basic will be free, so they get a hang of it as to, you know, say for example currency detection. They have to click a photo of the currency and the app will tell that this much is the, I mean this is the currency, this is the note, this is the coin. So for initial period it will be in the trial, so they get hang of it, and then it will be in the paid version. So premium and platinum services will be there which are paid.
okay. So good. I think this is a great example because this is a. So do you believe that this is a global problem to solve or just India geography specific? We will just evolve, you know, the methodology.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so yes, this is a global problem because this is not something that we are, means like the problem that I mentioned, it's not only related to India. And the important part is, you know, like at least through our market research, we haven't came across any platform like this. So there are few applications or even devices which are meant for visually impaired people, but those are, you know, like I would say that there are few technologies already exist and people are just making use cases out of those technologies. It's not like user centric, or those are not like into user perspective. In our cases, like what we have through our market research, we have found out that, you know, like there are many things, for example, rehabilitation of these people. There are many, what you can say, options by which we can rehabilitate or bring this community together. In even the practitioner ophthalmologist and practitioner optometrist, they themselves don't know what to do if the person is getting diagnosed with low vision, you know. So that's where we are.
So that product.
Just I want to add one thing. IAPB, which is an international association of preventable blindness, says, I mean, you guys must have heard that myopia is becoming extremely prevalent with the gadget use in children. So the IAPB says that by 2050, 1 in every 10 people in the global population will have a risk of going blind due to myopic complications.
Okay. So yeah. So let's come to the conversation of the looking at your product and your customers. So when we say that we need to baseline the product, right? So you know that your customer now currently, even though it is launched in India, you know that you are looking at customers to be globally. For example, for the first phase, assume that this product is launched in India. So you have a customer now. You have a product which, so exactly solving the problem of assuming just an Indian customer, right? You have the right go-to-market strategy. How are you reaching out to your customers?
So there are like 3-4 ways. One is that there is a platform called as Access India. So it's the very, it's sort of that, you know, we used to have this Gmail groups or something like that, right? So that way they have some conversational group exist. And most of these visually impaired people who can access the technology, they are there on that group. So this is very common channel to where you can reach out to lakhs of people through that Access India. That is definitely the one thing. Secondly, there are many foundations. For example, right now we are working with one foundation in the US. It's called Jivdaya Foundation. So what do? Is they are into health, eye care, and they purchase few things. I mean, you know, they purchase this eye care products from here, and then they distribute into. So they have like lot of connects into eye care hospitals within India. So they are ready to purchase our application as well. So one of their initiatives is
that is a sales. That is a sales thing.
But then these are some of those NGOs or through which we can. So this is another go-to-market.
So yeah. So my point was that's fine. I mean, you will have to. That's the different customer channels you are going to bring into to start reaching out to these people, right? When I meant by the go-to-market strategies, obviously the strategy is either you are reaching through B2B, right? You are directly reaching out to hospitals, or you are reaching out directly to individuals, B2C. So first you have to understand whether your strategy, the go-to-market strategy is right. Now, once this is established, now same, and he has asked me a question that, okay, can we take this product to the US market now, right? So very simple. These 3-4 parameters we have established here. Now take it to the next geography and ask the same question. So I have a checklist which I usually talk to people, not for today, but obviously we go through that checklist to make sure whether the same customer, same product and same people, can they adapt this same thing into the US market. So that will be your strategy. So if it requires your go-to-market strategy to be changed, then obviously you have to look at the different channels, is what I meant. Yeah.
So if you have to think about, I mean, those 3 checklists, right? Like, and perhaps I can repeat that part as well. I mean, if you need to have $1 million US, right? Like as a revenue, right? Like as a ballpark number, right? Like that you mentioned. Then perhaps rule of 40. And third is figuring it out, right? Like what will be the research? I mean, like in which way you will get connected, right? Like to the US market. And perhaps if you could share, right? Like those ideas, because what I'm thinking, imagine that like her product reaches $1 million US revenue, and she wants to get into the US market. What type of research, right? Like what type of competitive analysis, and how she should approach to ensure that she get maximum, right? Like out of, and that product is just like as an example.
Correct.
I mean, if you want to
yeah,
talk
it's a
about
generalized question,
Yeah.
obviously for any product. So once you have these 3 things in place, right, for your own company, the most important part is, and it applies here, right? Your go-to-market strategy has to have some competitive analysis, market research, and of course your ability to actually even do the customer segmentation, right? So once this score is required, the same has to be done and applied into the other market. Now you can do it from 30, 60 or 90 days, depending on the product which you are trying to bring to the other market. Because if you say that, okay, I don't know my customer yet, okay, a lot of people may not know who is going to buy my product, then obviously I would say you should do this research for at least 90 days. If you think that the product I have brought in and the customer demographics or personas are going to remain the same as who are buying my product here, then you can shorten that cycle in US. Okay, and I highly recommend that use some paid services. There are some tremendous automation services available which can give you this report for you, and do that. I don't want people to undercut it, because these are some expensive decisions which can be saved by spending upfront some money to make sure that you are taking the right step, because getting the first customer is equally important, which requires right market analysis and hitting the right customer. So that's how I would say.
No, this is great. And now imagine, right? Like, I mean, we have been able to identify the product, we fit into that criteria, we do the research as well. What should be the next step to ensure that we get maximum out of the opportunity that we have? So how could we create, right? Like how could we build the strategic alliances, partnerships? What type of, like, imagine, right? Like companies from Pune, they have qualified, right? Like all those criterias, and they want to now go, they have also done this market research through perhaps third party services. If they want to now enter into the US market, like what advice would you give, and how could we do this strategic alliances and partnerships so that we'll be able to give justice to the product?
Yeah. So this is little bit going to be also talking about the services. What I realized in the market, that yes, ab theek hai, lekin how do you then go to the customer, right? One of the feedback, yesterday I was with MCCI and there's a lot of women entrepreneurs who came there, and one feedback they also said that everybody was telling, okay, do you have any operations in US? So my first advice is that don't get scared by starting an entity in US. It's very easy to be done, and it is equally important that they should see a US local address. Okay. Now, thankfully, through Garze Marathi and some people who have come forward who are offering at a very low cost addresses where you can just register your company with that address, and with some shared services which can take care of your compliance, which can take care of your annual return filing or CPA requirements. But you should do that, because that is the first thing. And It's an expensive affair if you just do it on your own. Try to do it with, I would say, organizations or associations or conglomerates who are doing it together so that you can share, and there are a lot of companies who are offering that. I also suggest one of our folks you can just get your address registered there. The laws are dependent for taxation depending on the state. If you register in Delaware, if you register, a lot of people have some misnomer, and I think a lot of people believe, oh, I should establish my company in Delaware because of taxation. Okay, it is good, but unless you are Ambani or who really have that, big ticket taxation thing, it doesn't make any difference because US, even if it's a federal country, every state has its own law for taxation. So even if you sell one product in a different state, you have to file tax returns there and you have to pay taxes there. So it doesn't matter, but then find somebody who can really help hold your hand and make sure that you start that operations there. And it's very easy because everything else is then digital. You don't have to be sitting there, but at least you have someone. If they send a mail, there is somebody who can pick up that mail. So that is important too. Pure offshore, it will click, but not the way I would say it will help you grow the business faster. So that will be the first step I would say, Anand.
Perfect. No, this is really good. And now let me open the floor for everyone, so that we'll get the questions. But we definitely want to talk about this part again at the end, right? If we in our ecosystem, if there are any companies who have qualified all these three criteria, how should we reach and how should we basically talk, and perhaps that is. And one more thing, what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add him to the group, so you will get the direct access to him through that group, and perhaps you could also help us understand what we can do in the future. So this is something, yes. So please, a quick introduction.
My name is Sagar Khandelwal. I am a company secretary by profession. The last discussion, I just want to pick it from there. Actually, lots of our clients are also doing the same thing. So we have a client in AI right now who is wanting to convert themselves as a US company rather than an Indian company. So we help them flip it from being an Indian company to a US company now. So the idea was that the product which they have would be recognized in the US and the Europe only because they are from the US. That is what the perception is. So that's why we did it. So the question was that many of my clients right now struggles in terms of how do they find buyers there, or how do they do a lead generation process in the US so that they can go and sell their services or products there. So that is the question I would want to ask you.
It's an important question because lead generation is very, I would say, game of patience. There are a lot of marketing automated. Hello?
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah, so there are a lot of marketing automation tools which helps you build a campaign which you can even, there are little bit expensive software also, but depending on your appetite, I can share some of the names which helps you actually start getting, the common ones are LinkedIn Sales Navigator and all, but we all know that everybody uses that and none of us open that inbox. So you have to invest into softwares, little bit expensive, but they give you intent to buy signals from that company or the person whom we are targeting. So you have to understand that unless there is an intent to buy by that organization, there is no point in sending cold emails to them, right? So that is one way of having a good marketing automation tool. The second is making your presence felt. You have to make your presence felt by branding yourself as an established US company. Whether it is in terms of your podcast, whether it is by inviting your own customers there, or the industry experts which are influencers in the market. Sometimes you have to invest in by, getting some paid promotions by calling some people on your podcast. But trust me, lot of people, you think, oh, this guy is big, is a VP of, let's say, a pharmaceutical company, and will he come on my podcast? Never think. I mean, I always, in Stanford when I learned, never underestimate the power of asking. And a lot of times we Indians are very afraid of asking because we always have that fear that, oh, what if I get rejected? You are already rejected if you are not asking, right? We all know that. So never never be afraid of asking. So that's where I suggest that you should first believe that I need to be a brand. I am a brand by myself. And then once you start believing that I am an industry expert, my product is the industry best, then make sure that the people who can vouch for what you are actually bringing into the market, they speak the same language in the podcast or the article or the interview or the social media campaign which you build in. That actually resonates with the customers there. And people use search SEO, to actually search. And then more you find your content digitally available and your name and brand, more you will be, then visible. And once that credibility is built, then the leads the conversion rate becomes higher. I'm not saying that everything will be like easily started flowing in, but at least the trustworthiness is built because there are a lot of flyby companies, and the trust is the biggest issue people have. So building a credible brand is very important before you even start reaching out to people. So hope that helps.
This is very interesting because building credibility, and you mentioned this influencers, right? Using influencers. Recently, right? I've started seeing that influencers, they have now more power, right? Than any media as well. So utilizing them properly, right? Is going to be very crucial, right? Going forward. And I see that in India, right? Many insurance companies or broking companies, they have started using influencers because they are, now seeing the opportunity. But, in terms of starting your own podcast or starting something, it takes a lot of efforts as well, right? So do you think, right, there would be enough ROI for, starting some kind of a podcast or bringing, right? By every founder, right? Any founder, right?
Yeah,
Who would
so
like to.
again, we are talking of people who are wanting to get into the US market, which works with a certain DNA. Okay,
Right.
I'm telling you what is working there, which you can adopt. Okay, now if you are not ready for it, then sometimes you will have to change your mindset that, okay, if the market is looking for it, then I better adapt to it. And I'm not saying that every founder can do the job, it's the same way. Okay, so it's not that कल से podcast चालू किया तो लोग आना चालू हो जाएंगे or whatever, right? And there is no right recipe also that which podcast will work or not. But I said at least have some strategy. Okay, and trust me, podcasts are very cheap to produce. That's my take, and there's a lot of free. You don't have to have a very jazzy podcast machinery to really have that. There are simple podcasts. I myself will give an example of how it worked for me as a brand in Stanford, Lisa, where I was there. So we had like 5,000 plus alumni, right, in the course I was there online. And one day I said, when I joined the course, I realized, how am I going to connect with all these 5,000? There's no way you're going to connect with all these people, right? They will know you, and it's like a, anonymous connection. So next thing I did is, okay, now I need anything you do, you want to do it for networking. Networking is the most important part, whether it's in US or abroad, anywhere, all of us know that. So what I first did is, I started choosing people whom I thought will be good network effect, people who are already in love with this, what you can say, network effect. So if I bring them on my podcast, I know that they themselves will repost it. Okay. So trust me, I picked and choose 25 people and did just 25 people a podcast. Okay. It was that small effort.
Okay.
It became talk of the town. Because then I started getting messages from people who, can I be on your podcast, right?
Excellent.
And then I said, now I can choose whom I want to, right? So I said, then I used to look at, okay, is this relevant to me? The person who is doing what he is doing, is this contact going to benefit me when I'm going to be in future, let's say, approaching that industry? And then I chose them, and then So what happened is, then suddenly I realized that, okay, these people are going to give me base one, then can I do something more little bit aggressive? And I reached out to one of the professors in Stanford, who was a big communication, his name is Matt Adams. He has a good podcast called Think Fast, Talk Smarter. Okay, it's a beautiful podcast. I highly recommend for anybody who wants to do some communication. And I'll also share some of the free resources I have, which will help you even grow as a individual. But point is, I was like, why would he come on my podcast? Right? But again, that was the fear of asking. क्या होगा नहीं बोलेंगे, but you will be surprised. He just said yes, say, and I got one even professor from Spain whom I had known, and she was part of one of the case studies. So it was just that she was a very big leader in Europe, and she had influenced a lot of these gender laws and very influenced in European Parliament. But she was a professor in one of the colleges in Spain. And there is no way I was going to, she hardly speaks English and all. But I first reached out on LinkedIn, एक बार, दो बार, तीन बार, चौथी बार उसको लगा यार, I should answer this guy, And then she said she was on vacation. So she did my podcast when she was on vacation. So you can imagine that, things magic, magic works, and then what happens is you yourself gain the confidence, you learn, jab chai band kar do, but at least you get to know what people are thinking, what your customer is thinking, what your industry experts are thinking. So that's a learning, and it's a free way of doing market research. And that's what I'm saying, that, it's a small price to pay.
Right. Now I understood, right? Like, so market research, building that credibility, and also getting access to their connects, right? Like, is very important. So with that, perhaps we should be, आम्ही पण happy असायला पाहिजे की आम्ही right माणसाला बोलवलंय, so that we are also right, like that's a good strategy for us also to get you on this. आम्ही पण talk of the town who actually इकडे, but good.
I mean, seriously, I think that, I'll tell you another example which worked out very well for TEDx Pune. I'm also on the international advisory of TEDx Pune. Okay. So one of my job is to find the right people to give them and all that. So, and the TEDx is a very tedious process. They will not give everything to everyone. So when I suggested someone, the jury rejected that person.
Okay.
So I used my influence to actually say, no, you have to have her. Okay. Right. And her name is Dipti Pava. She's again my Stanford colleague, very good friend, lives in Switzerland. So when I told her, Dipti, you have to go to Pune. She has a small baby, she is in Switzerland, and she was like, I said, you should do it. I know you will do it. And I know that it was going to be a benefit for TEDx and for her too, because she recently came out with a book on founders. I will highly recommend to buy her book, and we will have a talk with her, podcast with her. Sure. Okay. Once you have podcast with her, I can tell you there will be more than 10,000 views for sure. Okay. Because what she did is, she came here, the TEDx guys were so impressed because her talk, she really did well. Then the podcast got released last week. Okay. Each year TEDx Pune releases a lot of podcasts. But her podcast, within 8 days, they got 10,000 views. So they were all, then they were like, thank you, you got the right. I said, I knew what was going to work for you. And then I know how Dipti is, So I worked with her on this accelerator program and everything. But she only taught me all this, how to take advantage of the network effect. And that's where I personally believe that, try to learn that skill as a founder. Sometimes you say, मैं मेरा product करूँगा यार, why should I come forward and talk about this? Right. There's somebody, my sales guy will do it. But I feel that the story has to be told by the person who is building the story.
Right. No, this is great. Anyone has any questions?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Nikhil. I'm co-founder of India's Medical Technologies. So we make spinal implants, like devices which are put in the human spine to treat diseases. So basically, one issue, like we recently launched, we got US FDA approvals, and we recently launched a product in US. But one issue we are facing is, like in India, people have a bias towards buying imported products. So they always want something from abroad and good quality products. That is what is perceived here. But in US, people want made in USA products. They don't prefer products coming from India or China or some other developing country. So how do we take care of this bias and promote our products in US?
Yeah,
That's
so
my
just
question.
so I think your answer is in your question itself, right? The first question you said that okay, how do I, you know, there's a bias in US for buying products from India, right? That's what your first question.
From US, they buy made in US products. They don't prefer products
Buying in India, right?
made in India or made in China. Or
I
things like
don't think that is appropriate. Otherwise, made in China would have not survived this long. Okay. Okay.
about the medical device sector,
Okay, so
not
let's,
the
yeah, no,
electronics and
even,
all.
even this product. So what you have to do and what people are doing is you have your US entity. Okay, then immediately you become a US company, right? Now where you contract manufacture depends on your company strategy, and that's what whether you are an Indian, whether you are an American, whether you are a German setting up in US. So you first set up your entity in US. You manufacture here. That's fine. The product can say product made in India, but manufactured by will come from the company which is the US entity, right? Produced in India but manufactured, at least designed by, there are various ways people do that. I mean, but important is make sure that the label has that manufactured by US, and it is a small price to pay, but if you are facing that challenge, then that is the easiest way to do it. And you shouldn't be afraid of, if you have FD approval, nothing like, you have FD approval, right?
Yeah, but the FDA approval is in the name of the Indian company.
Okay, I mean,
So
maybe what you will have to do is you have to, a lot of people do that marketed by also is one way of looking at it, but the entity which is reaching out to your customers has to be the US one. Okay, so if you are creating a company which allows them to believe that this company has an expertise to procure and produce these products from their partner company in India, you should be good. I've seen that happening, so we can take it offline, you know. There is a company who is in Canada. They had similar products. They wanted to establish in US, but they were manufacturing it in India. So they had the same problem. So I advised them that, you know, why don't you come here and set up an office in US and start looking at it. And now they are into 6th month of doing the same thing. So there are solutions, but you can't change perception what they are, but sometimes you have to work around it.
So just to add into this point, right, like one of the things that we found, right, like very interesting is, for example, right, like Germany and Europe, I mean, we have these localization services, but it's very difficult to get into European market, right? So what we have done is we found, right, like one progressive company over there. We started working with them closely, and then we told that, like, why don't you white label and use? I mean, I understand that it may not work, right, like in your case, but if they start selling the product, the same product, like server, everything, right, like would be in India. Perhaps in this case, white label case, right, like we'll have that server in their region as well. But the point is, you know, if we inherit the credibility that they already have in the market, it becomes very easy for us to expand in that, because otherwise it's very difficult to have office over there and like create everything over there. I mean, you may want to find out ways where you can partner with the companies that are well established in that market as well. I mean, that could be also one point.
I think that's a very valid suggestion. But again, but as you said, barrier to entry is expensive. And that's why I said that, you know, in Philadelphia, we are working with one entity where we are creating this ability for for people like you to have a very small, least expensive way of establishing your entity. And they are very close to the pharma market there. Philadelphia, as you know, is very close to all these things. And that's what we are working as part of one of my initiatives. But he has a very valid suggestion. Work with partners too. That might work. You know, just white label your product.
So, hi, my name is Milind Kulkarni. I run Citrain Engineering, a product development company in electric vehicles in Pune. So, in continuation to what you are saying, my question is the same, like working with local partners can always benefit in terms of services or product company where you support from India and they are locally present there. So what should be a good way to reach out or find those right partners sitting in India, because
Yeah.
having presence in US or traveling is one way, but
So I will, that's where I will wear the Garze Marathi GMG hat here. That is what we realize, that, a lot of our people need that right partner there, right? So based on what you are looking for, we can help you with, actually getting connected with people, and we'll just broadcast that, okay, somebody is looking for a sales partner, or somebody is looking for an entity who will represent them. And then if there are companies who come up and say that, yes, we might be interested, and then you can take it with them. There are companies like that. Or I would suggest go and take membership of some industry associations which are relevant to your industry. You will get some credible members who then you can, work with. That's the only other legitimate way I see. Otherwise, there are companies who will claim a lot, because America is a very aggressive marketing country. They will sell everything, and it's everybody who knows America. So you have to be very careful about whom you are working with. But so go with trusted and known sources, and that's why we felt that GMG is. We have a lot of Marathi professionals, experts abroad. So why not they start helping our founders? And that's one way of helping you people.
And just to add, right, like to this part, GMG, right, a lot of individuals, really accomplished individuals are contributing in a selfless way as well. There are, right, like a lot of opportunities, and perhaps I would request maybe you should connect with Madhavji as well, right? He can help you, right, like connect with the right people and also onboard you, right, like on Garze Marathi's. How many of you are already, right, like part of Garze Marathi? Okay, I'll ask the other way around. I mean, how many of you are not part of Garze Marathi? Okay. So perhaps this is a good opportunity for you to connect with Madhavji and try to see, right, like, because 12,000 professionals across the world, right, like Marathi professionals across the world, you will be able to get access to them, right, like through this Garze Marathi. And it is amazing program, passionate people over there. Sandeep is also one of the co-founders of Garze Marathi. So they are trying to do, right, like a very positive change, and we have started seeing that positive change. In India, right, like, I mean, Madhavji is also doing amazing work. So feel free to connect with him and be part of that community and keep, right, like, I mean, of course, get something, but also give, right, like over there as well. So that way, right, like, we'll be able to create a wonderful ecosystem. Yes.
Yes. Madhav has a question. Madhav. He wants to say something.
Hello. Yeah. So it's about the mobile application. So it's already there in US, India, and Australia, as I said, in beta stage. And our Google Analytics keeps showing us that it is used in US somewhere, because wherever it is used, it shows, right? So that way we are a little bit confident that we are doing something right, because people are using there. But we don't know, how to utilize what
exactly.
we have.
No, this is a good problem to solve. I'll tell you why. There was one of my Armenian friends. They built a very interesting product for parcel. They have some Armenian name. I forgot the name. You know what the idea is? It's like typically what we do is, okay, anybody going to Mumbai, then what we do is, मेरा जरा माझा मोबाईल घेऊन जातोस का आणि आपण तिकडे द्यायला लावतो. So people ship these things with friends, right? A lot of this. They found a problem that, okay, if somebody is going from X place to Y place, the couriers are expensive. So that's friends and family. They just little bit took a step away, like Uber. Okay, you now are sitting in a stranger's cab and going from X place. So he said, if you are comfortable that your product can go from X place to Y place with somebody even if you don't know and can be collected, they put a search price. So समजा मी आता पुण्याहून शार्लेटला चाललो आहे आणि कोणी म्हटलं की अरे माझे काही औषध घेऊन जातो का, तर ही विल पुट अ रिक्वेस्ट सेइंग ते औषध आहे आणि आय एम गोइंग टू पुट चार्ज, आय एम गोइंग फ्रॉम पुणे टू शार्लेट आणि आय विल टेक इट विथ $100 वॉट एवर मनी आय चार्ज. You won't believe, the biggest download of that app came from, they're Armenian, came from India. Maximum downloads were from India. So they called me up and said, the CEO can't even speak English. That was so. His translator was my Armenian friend. So she also knows a little bit English, but she said, Sandeep, can you help? Because we are puzzled that this is now getting used in India. And of course, the mechanism of payment and everything was through their platform, so they charge. My point is, they said, we want to establish a contact center in Pune or India. That's what their need was. So I helped them build a customer service center in India, because that is where they said that maximum of my customers are going to be there and distributors are going to come. So similar approach, you'll have to slowly look at who are the companies who will support you in the US market if you want to do that. Do some demo, I mean, you'll have to do some analysis. But just thought that this was a relevant experience to share.
Very interesting, because many times we feel that like product will work in this area, but it ends up like working. And I will tell you like very interesting part. So initially when I started my analytics company, analytics products we started developing, and when I used to give them the pitch, they used to tell me that like, you speak Japanese so well, why don't you help us with the translation and localization? So मी म्हटलं की चला लक्ष्मी येते तर म्हटलं आपण ते पण घेऊ काम, राईट? लाईक चला मग काय हरकत नाही ऍक्च्युअली. आता आपण काय की सगळं ऑफकोर्स राईट, लाईक इन्व्हेस्टर्स ॲट दॅट टाइम दे सेड दॅट लाईक यू कॅनॉट टेक ट्रान्सलेशन रिलेटेड वर्क बिकॉज इट इज नॉट इन लाईन विथ दिस. मग आम्ही वेगळी कंपनी काढली त्याची. पण अगेन राईट, लाईक काय येईल, इट्स व्हेरी डिफिकल्ट टू प्रेडिक्ट. या, एनीवन एल्स?
Sandeep, thank you so much for first sparing your time and coming over here, and thanks to Anand. I always say he really looks after the fraternity very well, and the intent for everybody to grow is very high. So the question I have is, so we have been consulting a lot of these product companies, and we tell them that you need to know your customer really, really well. Now they are into customer discovery phase, they are into trying to explore what their customers' choices, preferences, etc. The biggest problem I see here is, now people in India want to go to US market. They don't understand that customer, because these people do not have presence there at this stage. Later, maybe 5 years down the line, they will have a handful of people there who can do it. How do they get that part sorted? That sitting in India, trying to build a product which is to be sold in US, and without knowing their customer is a big challenge. What could possibly options they have?
Yeah, I think we covered that first, that when we looked at the tenets of any company, first is customer, second is your product, third is your go-to-market strategy, and fourth is the people who are actually doing it. Let's say we have these 3 or 4 elements. So the first part, which is the customer, which you need to know for the US market, you have to have the local support or understanding. Digitally you can see that, but I strongly recommend you should have and again it's a fine boundary between saying that, okay, talk to me, but that's where it is important that you understand. And I would like people like Rahul to comment, because I worked with him, we're still in conversation. So Rahul, why don't you share that, he had one customer whom the lead he generated from here itself, but how it immediately translated into somebody whom I was knowing, and which actually at least gave us some insight on what exactly the mindset was going through. So maybe Rahul, you can comment what benefit it has.
Yeah, so knowing the customer is very, very important. I mean, there's no second thought on that. But that is not enough in terms of, speaking their language is very crucial. So the terminologies which are being used in India, or we are maybe in other part of the world and the US, there is a difference. And having a local presence, like as Sandeep is saying, so like the influence part, ultimately the business happens when the people are giving the business trust, the people with whom they want to do the business. Ultimately, that is also equally important. So establishing that trust is very crucial, and so it is about the capability of the product, the people involved, uh, giving the required trust through various channels. I think these aspects are important. I think, and coming specifically to Madhav's question about how do we like study the customer sitting in India, right? I think that's where in the, at least what we have been using is the local partners. So the partner ecosystem is important because that addresses sitting in front of the customer in that country, talking their language and bridging the gap between maybe, you know, what you have and how they can utilize your product or a service.
आणि थोडासा गमतीचा भाग पण मी सांगतो, जस्ट टू ॲड टू दिस वाय इट इज रिक्वायर्ड. ओके, there are certain terminologies the customer will use when you are doing a product demo. Okay, if he says looks interesting to me, then it's not going anywhere. Okay, because and these are the terms which a lot of these people use. They will not offend you, but they will not necessarily say no to you. I mean, there are subtle ways people do. You go to British people, you know, they have a different accent and they have a different way of telling no. Okay, so you have to understand the culture. So culture is a very important part of why you need a local partner. Otherwise, he is telling you the same story to your customer what you are also telling. But sitting in a room, you can understand, the partner can understand the body language where it is going. You know, I can easily tell you now. There are many times when people say that, you know, oh, looks interesting to me. Let me talk to my colleagues and I'll come back to you. You expect that, you know, it's not going to happen. You know, so but at the same time, you know, if this is I like it, you know, and they don't use some of these terminologies lightly. When they say I like it, they know that they have shown an expression or a desire to continue the conversation. Okay, interesting means it is interesting to me, not necessarily, you know, I'll come back. So these are subtle things. I'm just giving you small examples of why you should talk to people who understand the language and the culture on how the businesses are done, because businesses are not done on the quality of the product, they are done on the relationship you have with your customer. So, yes.
Good morning, sir. My name is Dr. Arti Vyas. I am from healthcare industry, and my question is related with pricing. So it's regarding the services, not the products. So please help us out how to price your service.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Are you aware of, Madhav, you want to take up as a startup how we mentor defining unit pricing and strategy?
So pricing is a very tricky part of selling your service and making revenue out of it. Yeah, so when we talk about, and I'll limit it only to the service particularly. So there are three things which we insist people they should be looking at. And I'll keep the computation part separate than the strategy part. Okay, so the computation part, you have to have extremely good handling of what your fixed costs are going to be, what your variable costs are going to be, and what your unit of that service going to be costing you. Once you have that arithmetic fit in your head, then you can start playing with your strategy. So while you know that my unit cost is going to be X and it is a non-negotiable, that is the bare minimum money you want to get at least for break even, if not making profit out of it, then you can look at the strategy. So the strategy could be, I want to possibly go so undercut and make it so compulsive for somebody in a price sensitive market where price point decides hiring of your service. So that could be one strategy. Second strategy could be, I am going to be looking at a pricing a service which is feel premium kind of thing. So for example, it's two doctor, one doctor says, both of them are MD medicine, hypothetically assume that. Somebody says, I'm going to treat you at 100 rupees. And somebody says, no, I mean, you can't even meet me without appointment and I'm going to cost you 2000 rupees. There is a general perception that the guy with 2000 rupees not meeting without appointment, he may be actually doing nothing. I mean, he might be sitting empty in clinic waiting for a patient to arrive. But the way people perceive is different. So in a service industry, you have to essentially understand your customer and their psyche in terms of decision making point. Based on that, you can have a different price point. And third, importantly, that you look at the geography, and a lot of times when particularly you are selling your services abroad, this currency conversion rate matters. So somebody can very easily give you say $100 in US. If you translate that into an Indian rupee, it is immediately becoming 83 times or 80 times. So the way you try to compensate is that you make a different pricing strategy in one market, try to compensate it with the other market. So globally, for your operations, you have a different way of looking at the revenue, while your individual pricing strategy could be different. So obviously, it's not a straight answer, but you have to understand your cost in and out. That is because that is the lever which you can play with when you are deciding your price, and you need to understand your customer price point where it is going to be get sold. So that answers partially.
So do you also do products? Also. Okay. So again the difference is, you know, products never underestimate the cost of shipping also. Okay. So it's an important aspect too. The tax calculations are other part, but try to just don't convert in terms of rupees and see, you know, यहाँ पे 10 में बेच रही हूँ मैं, उधर में, you know, I'll sell it at 80 and then I'll still make money, because there are other things to cover as well. So there are various things to cover in pricing. I would say pricing with these thick books have been published, so you will have to probably go through that, but we can discuss offline on that. Yeah, but that's very important. That which market you are getting in. If you are getting into a flooded market, in the food industry, I'll just put an example. तुम्ही जर का आता भरपूर चांगले ब्रँडेड चिवडा आहे आणि तुम्ही स्वतःचा चिवडा लॉन्च केला, तर ऑब्व्हियसली यू आर कॉम्पिटिंग विथ अदर चिवडाज हू आर देअर इन द मार्केट फॉर सम टाइम, लाइक्स ऑफ हल्दीराम्स विल बीट यू ऑन द स्केल एनीवेअर, राईट? But you believe that Maza Chivda is very premium, and it is at a class where, you know, people will pay premium for it. That belief, then you have to stick to your and then keep that premium pricing and don't try to compete with the mass. Yeah, but then your product has to be a little bit, you know, you should be saying that, you know, a machine manila original, whatever. So then focus on the expertise, and if it is a handicraft product, then obviously you know that you can charge more and then keep that premium. But these are some of the factors you have to consider, and most importantly for people, it is important how they perceive your product, how you're branding, how you're packaging, how you are actually positioning. So positioning is very important. So that will define your pricing.
So just to add, handicraft, संदीप तू म्हणालास म्हणून की एका हँडीक्राफ्ट कंपनीला मी मेंटरिंग करतो. सो हँडीक्राफ्ट असं आहे ना की हँड पेंटेड मग आहे. आता तर मग 100 रुपयात फोटो स्वतःचा प्रिंट करून पण मिळतो, वर्सेस समबडी सेइंग की 1000 रुपयाचा मग आहे आणि मग त्याच्यामध्ये नो लेड वगैरे बरंच काय 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 काय. आय डोंट अंडरस्टँड ॲज अ एंड कस्टमर, आय रिअली डोंट केअर. मला छान दिसणारा कप पाहिजे. सो आम्ही त्याच्याबरोबर स्ट्रॅटेजीसाठी जे काम केलं, देर हॅज टू बी स्टोरी फॉर यू टू सेल. इट इज नॉट द प्रॉडक्ट, इट इज द स्टोरी यू सेल. किंवा उदाहरणार्थ मी ॲपलचं एक्झाम्पल नेहमी देतो. ॲपल काय करतं, त्याची एक लाईन असते, ते प्राईस एका पॉईंटच्या खालती कधीच आणत नाहीत त्या प्रॉडक्टची, ते डिस्कंटिन्यू करून टाकतात. ते असं नाही म्हणत की माझं हे जुनं प्रॉडक्ट आहे म्हणून 50% प्राईसला मिळेल, कधीच नाही तुम्हाला मिळणार. जस्ट सिम्पली डिस्कंटिन्यू, जस्ट टू मेंटेन देअर सेगमेंट ॲज अ प्रीमियम. सो देर आर मल्टिपल स्ट्रॅटेजीज. आणि परत संदीप म्हणाल तसं की तुमची स्पेसिफिक जॉग्राफी, स्पेसिफिक कस्टमर सेगमेंट, तुमचं प्रॉडक्ट शेल्फ लाईफ, तुम्हाला त्याच्यावरनं काय अचीव करायचं आहे, दॅट ऑल डिपेंड्स अँड ड्राईव्स युअर प्राईस पॉईंट्स. ओके.
Yeah, we are running out of time.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Abhilasha. I'm actually work with Expanders Business Coaching. So we actually coaches software founders, and so our major problem which we are facing for our customers is like now they are in US market obviously, and they have all the customers which are startups. And because of the recession hit, they are facing that problem because they not able to get their money what they have earned from there. So that is the problem which they are facing. So I just want to understand from you that if we tell them that what next step you can do to cater in that market only, if you don't want to target startups, if you want to target someone else, so what strategy they can apply?
If I'm if I understood your question correctly, what you're saying is the customer segment which they are catering to currently is
Yes.
is not in a position to pay them back.
Yeah,
So
because of the recession problem
recession
which
and
is
all.
hitting in
So,
the.
but is it a problem where they have already rendered services and they are expecting to get the money back, or now they want to target new customers?
Yes, I mean both the things.
Both the things. So then, see, obviously, there are things, if your product is aligned with certain segment, then obviously you have to look at your segment and which segment you are catering to. If the product is only focused on startups, then you have to pivot. You have to look at other customer segment who has desire to buy your services. So that's the best thing to do in this scenario. And currently, I think you raised a very valid point. As a startup founder, you all should know, and most of you know that fundings have dried up in last year completely. When I say completely, is that people have become very choosy. A lot of VCs have lost their jobs because they spend like anything in 21 and 22 in US. So industry is in a recovery mode, and very few sectors are getting good funding. Only because the big ticket investors are not necessarily now. I think the whole industry has come to almost a pause because of the Gen AI thing, because nobody knows what is going to get disrupted by what. So they are saying that if I put into a health tech product, okay, I don't know if this product is going to remain relevant in years time or not. So it has become a challenge for people. So unless you have a product whose moat, as you say, the LTV is very well known. When I say LTV is lifetime value, you already established the customer, you already know. We are seeing startups facing a lot of these problems for sure. And people are moving. In fact, everybody now who is doing anything is putting Gen AI in their, on website, just to show that, they have that presence. Okay, with that, I think we can. Yes. Any last question, or we can go? Thank you very much. I think it was a pleasure. I don't know how much useful these conversations were to most of you, but I enjoyed this. Questions were very relevant to, close to my heart, the questions I like to answer. I hope there are no right answers to anything. If I say that I know everything, probably that's not the right way to put. But in a modest way, I really thank you for the opportunity, Anand Sagar. Of course, Garze Marathi is something where I come from, so I can't thank my own organization. But my point is, you're doing a great job. These founders, let's hope that some of you come to US and be successful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Sandeep, for these enlightening answers. And we always, right, like have challenges with understanding things from the perspective someone, right, like sitting in India, we may not get, right, like that perspective over here. And what I have seen, right, like there are a lot of videos, YouTube videos. Yesterday, right, like someone reached out to me and said that, look, I'm not able to join, but will there be a video, will you share, right, like that video with me? I'll tell you, right, like there is huge content on YouTube. You'll get like so many details and so many things, but what you will not get over there is ability to connect personally with the speaker, personally, right, like with the other founders, right, like passionate founders, and that's something is so important. So I'm so happy, right, like again, right, like everyone, many people showed up. I'm sure that like you'll get direct access to now Sandeep sir. And one very important aspect that we need to understand here is that the mindset that is required, right? Like we will need some kind of a coaching as always. And yesterday I got an opportunity to attend Sadhguruji's session. I was able to meet him, and it was an honor, right? Like it was a cherishable moment. But one thing, right? Like as you know, right? Like he tells so many great things. One line that really, right, like was something that resonated with me, and I hope, right, like would also be something that will be relatable to you, was if you cannot do something and if you don't do it, that's fine. If you cannot do something and if you don't do it, that's fine. But if you can do something and if you don't do it, then that's a disaster. So we have now got someone from US to get into the US market. And if we don't get effectively in the US market, then that's a disaster. So we all need to ensure that like we get maximum out of this opportunity.
Yeah, I think what you are giving these founders is a great platform where people like, I have also come and contributed, but I think various people were coming, so now attending session, as you rightly said, YouTube is there, right? But getting that vibe in the room, okay. जसं आपण मी परत एकदा आय क्लोज विथ दॅट नोट दॅट जेव्हा आपण सरकारी कार्यक्रमाला जातो म्हणजे चौकशी करून सांगतो म्हणजे काहीच होणार नाही आहे. सो देन वी ऑल नो दॅट, राईट? सो थँक्यू व्हेरी मच.
थँक्यू.